I'm Matt the Jerk, and I'm here with Dynasty Owner for your weekly video breakdown on some of the teams that we've been talking about recently. So today we're going to jump right into it. Today we're going to get into some top 10 running back rankings. And then also in my article, I want to mention that I talk about an interesting trend that I noticed from the past 4 NFL drafts and the fastest players, at least running backs and wide receivers from the drafts. The past 3 years, not including 2020, all the fastest running back and receivers had been drafted pretty high in dynasty leagues, and they would have been drafted pretty. Obviously, 2020, they were Jonathan Taylor and Henry Ruggs. I'm not going to get too much into it. You can go to my article and read about it, but it's an interesting trend that in 2021, pretty much neither running back or wide receiver, the fastest for the class, is being drafted. And if they are being drafted, it's not till the very end of the 3rd round. So I don't want to, spoil it. Go ahead and read the article. That's what my article is talking about that and why that trend is kind of breaking, at least in this year. So anyway, it's a little interesting. It's partly based on where the players landed, which teams they landed on. But you would, big would outweigh some of those landing spots. And so just go ahead and take a look at it. It's interesting. But for right now, we're going to jump straight into some running back rankings. So these rankings, they're full dynasty with all of my rankings. These aren't total point rankings. These aren't only rankings for 2021. This is full. We're looking out many, many years, and that's what I'm trying to do at least. They're not going to be perfect. Nobody's rankings are ever perfect. So we do the best that we can. My honest top 10 rankings, every other players who I would take in a startup. So that's just the way it works out. It's some of them seem strange as other. Little spoiler, I have Cam Akers ranked above Dalvin Cook. That feels weird, especially from even dynasty, traditional fantasy redraft standpoint. But we're not doing just traditional, 1 year or even, traditional dynasty. We're looking at salary, we're looking at contract implications, we're looking at future contracts that we expect to happen. So it also seems strange that I don't have Alvin Kamara in the top 10. And that's probably one that most people are going to get hung up on, and that's okay. He might deserve to be in the top 10. He might not. It all depends on how he performs over the next couple of years. But with a $15 million contract, value tier where some of these other players are. So without further ado, I'll share my screen with you so you can see these rankings. See if I can split it so you can see all of them. Just about, yeah. So first up, we have Jonathan Taylor, and I'll let you look at this, and I'll take him down and talk about him a little bit here. So Jonathan Taylor, he's a running back 1. Not too much of a surprise here. So in 2020, finishes RB6, projected to finish as RB4 in 2021. His salary is top notch. He's less than $2 million for 3 more years. Unreal value. Really no other option for me to put number 1. Other than him. So for sure be the number 1 running back I take if I was doing a startup today. So for how much value Taylor's contract, because that's the big value in is the contract. The big value that he has is comparable to the production that CMC provides, and that's his real big value. So yes, he's making over $16 million per year, but if he continues to do what he's done his entire career, he's still going to be a value at that number, and that's why I have him in as RB2. So if I had the first pick, I would take Jonathan Taylor, at least first running back pick. I would take Jonathan Taylor. And number 2 would be CMC. The next 2 spots were kind of tough. I wrestled with them. So back-to-back, I have Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler. And flipperation for this article. But ultimately, I decided that Nick Chubb's 1 year, $1.8 million salary, which is too much to ignore, too great a value. He's almost guaranteed to be a top running back as well. So that's the reason I have him ahead of Eckler. And so now we get to Cam Akers. Cam Akers is my running back 5. And this might not sit well with a lot of people. To be honest with you doesn't really sit that great with me, but that's kind of the way I statted it out and the way it ended up. I even talked to a few of my league mates in one of my paid leagues, and we had a great discussion about it. All positive things came out of it, but it didn't change my rankings. And the main question they had was, how could I have CMC at running back 2 and not have Kamara in the top 10? And then it started to transition into Akers talk as well. So it's CMC is on another level. We know that. When you draft CMC, you're getting a running back and a wide receiver essentially in one spot. And that can be said about Kamara too. But CMC is on another level. He would have been last year if he'd have stayed healthy, I believe. He was the year before that. And I believe he will be this year. That mixed with the fact that we don't fully know the Saints situation, quarterback situation, how that whole offense is going to shape up. I could be way off with this, not inside the top 10 ranking. And it's very possible I will be. But at this point, I'm having him outside the top 10. I have a lot more valuable players, a lot lower contract players that I have above him, and that's the big reason for it. And this is how I had this discussion with them. So the question I posed them, if a player that gives you 75% of the production of Kamara, but he's 1/10 the price, why would you not always draft that player? And some people were saying, well, that extra 25% is going to be enough for your opponent. Say your opponent drafts Kamara, he's gonna beat you in those weeks, and that's probably true, at least on paper. But I'm looking, once again, not just 1 year, not just 2 years. I'm looking down the line 5-6 years, even more to project that far out. But that's what I'm trying to do. So yes, Kamara will have more production most likely than Akers. I've admitted that. 75% the production is what Akers is probably going to give you. It's most likely to give you. So when you go up against the Kamara owner, if you can afford to own him, then that position will probably be beat. You'll probably be beat in that one position. But you also have to look at what you're saving by not having Kamara. Or you're going to beat him in another position, wide receiver, with a younger quarterback, with a cheaper quarterback. So it's all things you have to take in mind. In the end, I put Akers well ahead of Kamara, solely for the fact that his salary is right around 1/10 the price, actually even more than that. So up next, we have Najee Harris. He's number 6. He's the lone rookie on the list. I'm very excited about his future. It's kind of tough to project somebody that hasn't even taken an NFL snap. That's really the reason he's not a top 5 dynasty running back. Just the unknown. It's a little scary to throw him in there without seeing what actually he can do on an NFL level. But good chance that he'll rise up if he shows early production, especially in the first half of the season. So I'm going to talk about 4 players up next. So sandwich in between 2 2020 rookies, we have 2 veterans, and the 2 veterans are Saquon and Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook is the only other big salary running back I have on this list, along with CMC. So Saquon is a single year left on his contract. It's still a value. It's a mid-tier contract, right around $8 million. If we knew that he didn't have big money on the horizon, say he had 2 years left, 3 years, he'd be top 3 ranked. But say he had 2 years left, he would be ranked higher. But we do know that the big money's on the horizon. He's most likely going to make more than CMC does now. If not, he's going to make right around it. He's got a contract year. He's playing contract year this year. He'll get a new contract next year. He's, of course, going to be rostered in 100% of leagues just because he's that talented of a player that people will be able to absorb that $16 million, $17 million cap hit. But his value is going to rapidly decline. There's no doubt about it. It's just, how it works with these big contracts. So look for his salary to double. It's essentially going to double in 2022. It's going to go right around 7.8 million to around 16 million, probably a little bit north of that. So Dalvin Cook's going to be just fine as well. You're going to get the production of him as long as and we hope he does. I project he's going to outscore Kamara over the next couple of years, 2-3 years, and that's really the biggest. It's really the reason he's ranked higher. That and the fact that he is about $2.4 million less per year than Kamara. So it's kind of a no-brainer to put Cook above him. I think he'll outscore Kamara over the next couple of years, and he's cheaper. So that's really the recipe to rank somebody higher than the other player. And then lastly, we have J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift. So Dobbins makes roughly $700,000 less than Swift. And it's not, a ton of, it could be a nice player on your roster. But that combined with the fact, once again, I project him to outscore Swift over the next couple of years, it's a no-brainer to put him above him. A little concerning that Gus Edwards signed a 2-year, $10 million contract extension. I mean, he was there last year, so we saw how valuable Dobbins was. And the way I phrased it in my article was, I'm not more concerned about Gus Edwards to Dobbins and to Swift. So I think there's going to be a similar between each of those. Maybe Edwards will take a little bit more than Jamal Williams will, but I think it's pretty negligible. Yeah, at some point we're splitting hairs. They're both going to have good seasons. They're both going to have great careers. They're both at extreme value with 3 years left and very cheap contract. And both on what we project to be better teams coming into the 2021 season. So I also want to kind of post-preface this by saying, I don't want the takeaway from this article and video to be, I'm never going to draft Kamara over anyone in the top 10. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that under no circumstance is Kamara for sure going to be my number 11 running back. Like I would never take him above Akers, because that's not true. This is how I view my drafts. I go into my drafts thinking that I want low contract, low salary running backs, younger running backs. That way I can save later for the expensive quarterbacks, the expensive wide receivers. That's just my philosophy, and that's what my rankings reflect. I would much rather take a Nick Chubb for this year, a Cam Akers for this year, a Najee Harris even for this year is unknown, and maybe pay up way later for a Russell Wilson, even a Mahomes, depending on how late he falls, or high contract receivers. I know that DeAndre Hopkins is probably as expensive as it gets, so maybe that's not a good example, but something like that where I want to pay for the wide receivers and quarterbacks, and I don't want to pay for the running backs. Just history has showed us that the expensive running back salaries just tend to not work out, in real life, and I think we're starting to show in the past couple of years in Dynasty Owner that they don't really work out that well for fantasy either. So that's all I want to say. I hope that everyone gets something out of this as they go through their mock drafts and then eventually their real startup drafts. So I appreciate everybody sticking with me. Listen to this. Go ahead and check out the article that pairs with this as well. Hope everybody stays safe.